Mom is a memory erasure specialist who helps people erase painful memories. But Dad's first love, who always opposed him, is a memory weaver. Because of a fight with Dad, she took away patients Mom had cured, weaving memories of amplified pain for them. The patients broke down and passed away. Mom's medical skills were questioned and resisted as a result. Dad vowed to go abroad, catch his first love, and make her apologize and confess her crimes. But he went abroad for 7 years and never came back. Mom lost her job and was at her wit's end. She returned to her parents' home and accepted a marriage alliance. 7 years later, Dad finally came back with his first love, saying he wanted to apologize to Mom. He came to my school and asked why Mom wasn't home, holding my half-brother's hand. I looked at him inexplicably and said, "Ma, moved into our new dad's house a long time ago." The weather turned colder, and the north wind howled at the school gate. I looked at the old dad I hadn't seen in 7 years. He was wearing a dark gray coat and gold-rimmed glasses. He was tall and still as handsome as before. He was the most refined and handsome man in the world, as Mom had said. But at that moment, hearing my words, his expression froze and he frowned. "Lily, didn't Mom teach you that you can't call other people Dad?" As he said that, he reached out to pull me. "Okay, come back with Dad first. Your mom will always come to pick you up." The confused expression on my younger brother's face turned stern when he saw my dad reaching out. He immediately stepped forward, his little face serious, and pushed him back angrily. "Don't touch my sister. I'm going to tell the teacher to catch you." My dad was caught off guard and pushed back a little. Only then did he notice the little boy standing beside me, a head shorter than me. His frown deepened. "Whose child is this? So rude." I patted my brother's head, reassuring him that it was okay. Then I pulled him behind me and calmly looked at my dad, saying, "This is my brother, Mom, and my new dad's child." Dad seemed unable to listen anymore, and impatiently interrupted me. "You're lying through your teeth now. I should have come back sooner. Your mom is too soft-hearted, she really can't manage children." It was one thing to criticize me, but after abandoning Mom for 7 years, he could still say bad things about her. I coldly hardened my face in annoyance, and didn't want to pay him any more attention. A teacher noticed that something was wrong, and came over to ask about my dad's identity. I simply replied, "I don't know him." The teacher's face immediately darkened, and security guards nearby all came over. They surrounded Dad with great vigilance, until Nanny Martha came and took us away. Dad was no longer able to get close to me. He was so angry that the veins on his forehead were bulging. Staring at my departing figure, he said furiously, "Lily, stop making trouble. Your mom has been waiting for Dad for 7 years, and Dad has finally been able to come back. Do you want to break your mom's heart?" The wind shook the branches of the trees, and yellow leaves rustled to the ground. I turned back from a distance. Clenching my fist, I replied with the last sentence. "Mom isn't waiting for you anymore." Dad obviously didn't believe it. His voice contained an unquestionable certainty. "You're still young, you don't understand. Your mom couldn't live without me before. 7 years ago, she lost her job again, penniless and nowhere to go. What else could she do but wait for me?" So he knew. He knew that 7 years ago, Mom and I were left penniless and with nowhere to go. At that time, I was also suffering from a severe congenital illness. If it wasn't for not wanting me to suffer, Mom might not have. I pulled back my thoughts. I ignored him and left. When I got home, Mom was sitting in front of the French windows, looking through patient medical records. Daddy Arthur rolled up his shirt sleeves and was frying fish in the kitchen. On the living room TV, a familiar face appeared. The reporter's voice came out. "Professor David, the youngest orthopedic professor at Jiang City Hospital, returned to the country this afternoon. This is his official return to domestic hospitals after studying abroad for 7 years." Mom's hand, turning the medical records, seemed to pause for a moment. Nanny Martha's expression changed drastically. She hurried over and frantically turned off the TV. She said in a panicked voice, "This channel didn't use to broadcast these things." Mom gently put down the medical records and said slowly, "It's okay, Martha. You don't have to deliberately turn it off in the future." She got up and walked over. Helping me take off my backpack, she patted my brother's head again. From the kitchen, Daddy Arthur's voice came. Wash your hands and get ready to eat. Mom took my brothers and my hands and went to the kitchen to wash them. When we were almost at the kitchen door, I couldn't suppress my inner unease and said, Mom, I went to kindergarten today to pick up my brother. At the school gate, Dad came to find me. Mom's expression froze. I explained, the one from before. That Dad. Daddy Arthur happened to be carrying dishes out. He probably heard what I said. The knuckles of his hand, holding the fish, momentarily turned white, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. But he quickly returned to normal and carried the dishes to the dining room. At the dining table, he ladled a bowl of fish soup for Mom. He said gently, "It was a little salty last time. This time I put less salt, try it." Mom tasted it and said politely and distantly, "It's good." Daddy Arthur cleared his throat. After a long pause, he said in a slightly unnatural, deep voice, "If David bothers you, if you need my help." "No need." Mom put down her soup bowl without emphasis. Calmly and decisively she interrupted him. Mom didn't like Daddy Arthur interfering in our affairs. When they married 5 years ago, Daddy Arthur was very unwilling and set 3 rules for her before the wedding. He said that marital property would not be shared. Only talk about the interests of the 2 families, not feelings. He also said that he didn't like children's noise and wouldn't allow me into his study. Even now, half of his study had long since become a reading corner for me and my brother. Mom was always gentle, but she also always had a good memory. At that time, she had no choice. Only embarrassment remained on Daddy Arthur's face. The meal was eaten in silence. After dinner, Daddy Arthur went out to work overtime at the company. Nanny Martha also left. Not long after they left, the doorbell rang. Mom got up and went over, asking as she opened the door, "Did you forget something?" The door opened, but she was instantly silenced. Wind poured in from outside, silently blowing her coat hem. Her hand on the doorknob remained still for a long time. After a good while, she said coldly, her voice slightly hoarse, What are you doing here?" Dad stood outside the door, bringing with him Aunt Monica, who had killed Mom's patient 7 years ago. When I walked over, I saw his eyes, slightly red, meeting Mom's gaze. "Sarah, long time no see." Mom was momentarily dazed. 7 years was too long. So long that Mom and I seemed to have long since believed that he would never come back. Our lives had also long since returned to normal. But he had come back. But Mom was only momentarily distracted. Soon her face only showed coldness. She went straight to close the door. Dad hastily reached out, blocking the doorway, and grabbed Mom's wrist. His voice carried a hint of urgency. "Sarah, I brought Monica to apologize to you. I promised you 7 years ago." Mom violently sobbed off his hand. Aunt Monica looked unwilling. She pouted and angrily pushed Dad, saying, "It's settled, right? An apology in exchange for you letting me stay with you for another month. I've run out of money, and I have nowhere to live in China." Dad seemed not to have expected her to say it directly. His expression was momentarily flustered. He quickly lowered his voice, quite annoyed, and said, "All right, I know." Only then did Aunt Monica contentedly raise her chin, looking at Mom disdainfully, saying, "Sorry, okay? I killed your mental patient." After she finished speaking, she grumbled unhappily, "Who told David to argue with me at the time? I just couldn't stand it. I didn't expect that mental patient to be so fragile. It was just implanting a little memory." Mom's hands, hanging by her sides, slowly dug into her palms. Before Aunt Monica finished speaking, she suddenly stepped forward and slapped her hard across the face. Aunt Monica's face was full of arrogance and extravagance. With the crisp sound of the slap, it all froze on her face. After a good while, no one had recovered. Mom looked at her with icy eyes and said, "Your apology should be said to Mr. Will's grave. But perhaps it's not necessary." Her voice paused slightly, her eyes only showing red. "Mr. Will has turned into a ghost, and he will definitely not let you go. He will come for you, Monica," Mom had said. Uncle Will was an orphan with no relatives and no marriage. Otherwise, Aunt Monica would not have been able to kill him. Because there was no criminal evidence of catching and implanting memories, She was able to get away completely. Nor did the deceased's relatives pursue the matter. Aunt Monica finally came back to her senses. Her eyes were wide with anger, and she rushed towards Mom with a ferocious expression. "How dare you hit me? Sarah, are you crazy? I came to apologize to you out of kindness because David is letting me live in his house for free." Dad also frowned, very dissatisfied, and said, "Sarah, you've gone too far this time. Monica did something stupid in the first place, and you provoked her first. I finally persuaded her to come and apologize to you." Disgusting. Who the hell needs your apology? Mom was hysterical, angrily scolding. Aunt Monica angrily reached out and grabbed Mom's hair. She and Mom started fighting. I was furious and pounced over, standing on tiptoe and biting Aunt Monica's arm hard. She suddenly felt pain and let go of Mom's hair. My brother also rushed out, holding his toy shovel and the feather duster Daddy Arthur used to teach him a lesson. Like a valiant warrior, he fiercely hurled the object at Aunt Monica and Dad. His small body trembled with fear, but he still raised his head and angrily shouted, "Don't bully Mom. Don't bully Sis." Dad furrowed his brow and lowered his head, finally seeing his younger brother holding a feather duster in both hands. He was now in his early 30s and had already become a medical professor. His memory had always been extraordinary. He quickly recognized his brother, and his face turned extremely grim. This child. Why is he still here? Then he suddenly remembered something. He looked at Mom, then stared intently at his brother. "What did you call her? What did you just call Sarah?" His brother's eyes widened. "This is my mom and my sister. Bad people. My sister has already called the police. You wait for the police to come and arrest you." A darkness, rage, and disbelief gradually welled up in Dad's eyes. "Impossible. Sarah, we're not even divorced yet. You can't be with someone else." He stopped abruptly, remembering something. 7 years ago, he had secretly signed a divorce agreement to appease Aunt Monica, who was throwing a tantrum. But he had hidden that agreement in his study and hadn't told Mom. Panic and terror gradually rose in Dad's eyes. "Sarah, you. Mom took my hand and my brother's hand, and looked at him coldly, saying, 'See clearly, then get out.'" Dad staggered back. His face gradually turned pale, and he shook his head in denial, deceiving himself. "No. Impossible. Everyone who lives in this area is a prominent figure in Jing City. Sarah, you don't even have a job, and you've broken off contact with your family. And you're raising such a big child." He suddenly looked at Mom. "Sarah, are you working as a nanny here?" Mom laughed in anger. She finally didn't want to say another word, and took me and my brother by the hand, turning around to go inside. Behind us, Dad hurried to catch up. "I know you resent me for those 7 years. But Monica didn't want to apologize to you. She was suicidal for 7 years. She tried to jump off a building more than 10 times. You're a psychologist, you know best that human life is paramount. Get out." Mom couldn't listen any longer. She grabbed a glass ornament from the entrance and smashed it hard at the person behind her. The ornament hit Dad's forehead. Blood instantly flowed down his forehead. Aunt Monica screamed. "I told you she wasn't a good person. David, have you seen clearly now? You've been gone for 7 years, and she has such a big son with another man. I've been suicidal for 7 years. That's because I was thinking of you as a brother. So you could see this scheming woman for what she is." Dad suddenly lost control and roared at Aunt Monica. "Shut up. She doesn't have a son with someone else." Aunt Monica instantly lost her temper. "Am I the one who cheated on you? Why are you yelling at me? You really don't know what's good for you." After she finished speaking, she turned and walked away in a huff. The north wind blew even harder, breaking tree branches. Dad looked at Aunt Monica's departing figure, pain and difficulty surfacing in his eyes. He hesitated for a long time, but still said helplessly, "Monica is just willful. She never grew up. I have to go see her." "Sarah, stop lying. Move back sooner. I've already cleaned up the house. I'll find a job for you. Lily needs her father too." Mom pulled me and my brother inside. With a bang, the door was closed. Through the French windows, I saw in the dim light of the front yard. Dad stood there for a long time. He struggled again and again, but finally turned and hurriedly left to chase after Aunt Monica. In those 7 years, I actually missed him occasionally. He had left too suddenly. Before that, he had treated me well. But seeing him again now, I realized I no longer had any father-daughter feelings for him, only disgust. I turned my head and saw Mom taking a wet wipe to wipe the wrist that Dad had grabbed. I knew that she no longer loved Dad either. After 7 years, all that remained for us was hatred. At night, Mom and I lay in bed. In the bedside table, there was still a bank card. It was Uncle Will's, who had deposited it with Mom 7 years ago. At that time, his condition had improved a lot. He told Mom that when he got even better, he wanted to go to the South to start a small business. He said he didn't want to be trapped in the past anymore. He wanted to live like a normal person. That was also, in my memory, a time when Mom was exceptionally happy. She had pulled a dying, desperate person out of the abyss. But, Mom probably thought I was asleep. She hugged me and whispered, trembling slightly, I originally wanted to chase him abroad and die together with Monica, just to avenge him. My patients are like children that Mom has carefully nurtured. She reached out, her fingertips gently brushing my hair across my forehead. But Lily is still small. Mom can't bear to. Mom still wants to watch Lily grow up well. Mom is really selfish. I leaned into her embrace and whispered, it's not Mom's fault. Mom's body stiffened suddenly, and she lowered her eyes to look at me, who had already woken up. I looked up, meeting her painful and guilty gaze. I raised my hand and wiped away the tears at the corners of Mom's eyes. Lily also hopes that Mom can live well. Uncle Will must have hoped so too. Uncle Will knew it wasn't Mom's fault, and he never blamed her. That's why the only will he left behind before his death was for Mom. He left a will, leaving all his meager assets to Mom. He said, I'm sorry I failed Dr. Sarah and your excellent medical skills. Mom hugged me tightly. I heard her very quiet and desperately suppressed sobs. In the dimness, in the silent swaying of the tree shadows on the French windows, I remembered Mom's past, the past in my memories. Mom said that in her life, she had been cautious in almost every step. The Millers were rich and powerful, but their eyes were only on Uncle Robert, who was 3 years older than Mom. They gave all the best resources to Uncle Robert. Academics, companies, connections, shares. When it came to Mom, Grandpa only had one sentence. Take care of that face and marry into a family that's most beneficial to Miller Corp in the future. Mom didn't want to. She struggled and fought for many years, ignored and despised by all the Millers. She tried her best to study at the best university she could get into, refusing the art academy her grandpa had arranged for her. After graduation, she had a big fight with her family, refusing the job her grandpa had arranged, the so-called job that future mothers-in-law and husbands would like the most. She went to a psychological clinic and became a memory eraser, helping patients erase painful memories. When she finally carefully won a good life and future for herself, the Millers finally realized that she was really starting to become uncontrollable. The Millers couldn't accept losing this marriage tool they had painstakingly raised. They started to pressure Mom, forcing the psychological clinic to fire her, and making it impossible for her to find a job elsewhere. Dad appeared when she was at her most broken and desperate. He was Mom's senior in college. When Mom was at her most difficult, when other wealthy young men avoided her, he was the only one who helped her. He used his limited savings to help Mom rent a house. When Mom couldn't find a job, he said he would invest in Mom to open a psychological clinic. He said, Sarah, no one is anyone's tool. Whether it's marriage or career, it should be in your own hands. Mom opened a psychological clinic. Dad was with her through the hardest and most difficult times. The person who offers help in a time of need is always too unforgettable. Mom gradually grew fond of him. After Dad confessed to her with a flushed face under the influence of alcohol, she made the first impulsive decision of her life. She got a marriage certificate with Dad in a flash marriage, and then told the Millers the result. Grandpa and Grandma were furious. They couldn't accept either her career or her marriage. Mom refused to back down, and after arguing, she broke off contact with her family. She had a simple wedding with Dad and gave birth to me, until one day when I was 2 years old, Dad suddenly said to Mom, Sarah, your hair has become a lot drier after childbirth. Why not cut it short and take care of it? Mom was a psychologist, best at observing people's expressions. She felt something was wrong and secretly followed Dad. Then she discovered Aunt Monica, who had short hair and was boisterously arguing with Dad. When Dad came home at night, Mom asked about Aunt Monica. Dad was stunned for a moment but said casually, "She was half my first love. I didn't know anything back in middle school, just messing around. She just returned to the country recently. She's just a man, childish and reckless. Sarah, if you see her in the future, don't pay attention to her." Mom sat on the sofa with me in her arms and didn't speak for a long time. After that, they argued and had Cold War several times because of Aunt Monica. Aunt Monica said she would come to apologize, but instead, she pulled Dad into the kitchen and sneered. "Is it necessary? If I liked a ugly duckling like you, would it be her turn?" Dad sighed helplessly. Later, Aunt Monica called Dad late at night, saying she was drunk and wanted Dad to take her home. Mom followed her and saw Aunt Monica get up from a group of friends at a drinking party and leaned over to kiss Dad on the face. Mom's suppressed anger and resentment completely collapsed in an instant. She rushed over and slapped Dad hard across the face. Then she slapped Aunt Monica across the face. Aunt Monica started acting shamelessly on the spot. Dad couldn't get off the stage and said angrily, "Monica is just drunk. She's just a man. Besides, they didn't even kiss." Mom cursed for the first time in her life at Aunt Monica and Dad. She said angrily, "Act your mom, all of you." Mom filed for divorce from then on. But at that time, I was less than 3 years old and didn't understand adult grievances. I was just very afraid of losing either Dad or Mom. When Dad saw that Mom was really going to get a divorce, he panicked and apologized to her. He repeatedly promised that he would keep his distance from Aunt Monica in the future. He also brought me and knelt outside Mom's bedroom door. He whispered to teach me, "Tell Mom Lily is very cold outside." Mom didn't want to open the door. Dad wouldn't let me go back to the children's room and made me stay with him outside the door all night. The next day, I caught a cold. Because my health wasn't good to begin with, it triggered a heart attack. I had a high fever and fainted, and was rushed to the emergency room. Dad said to Mom, "Lily can't live without her dad." Mom, with her eyes bloodshot, waited for me to come out, and finally relented for my sake. She told Dad, "There won't be a next time." After that, Dad no longer associated with Aunt Monica. But Aunt Monica felt terribly humiliated. She felt that Dad's estrangement was an admission of what Mom had said. That night, she seduced Dad while drunk. She said she couldn't bear to lose face in front of her friends, and went to Dad's place to have a big fight. Then she went from bad to worse, somehow getting close to Uncle Will. She implanted memories of double the pain, causing Uncle Will to break down and die. After that, even though she didn't leave any criminal evidence, she still felt guilty and fled the country. Dad was furious and vowed to bring her back. Actually, from the first day Dad chased after her abroad, Mom stopped waiting for him. She knew he wouldn't really bring Aunt Monica back. And her life and mine would no longer rely on that so-called father and husband. I leaned into Mom's arms and fell into a deep sleep. My and Mom's lives continued as before. I studied hard, and Mom continued to run the psychological clinic well. That incident 7 years ago had gradually been forgotten by the public. The death of Uncle Will at the time was also determined by the police to be a suicide under severe depression, unrelated to others. Mom's clinic was receiving more and more patients, and was highly praised. She began to plan to open another clinic in Haicheng. The procedures for opening a new clinic were complicated. She also mentioned her identity as Mrs. Arthur seemingly unintentionally. All the procedures became simple and quick. She kept her promise and never mentioned feelings with Daddy Arthur. But when it came to benefits, she never hesitated to bring up Daddy Arthur to get conveniences for herself. And Daddy Arthur was an illegitimate son of the Smiths. It was also through his marriage with Mom, coupled with the incompetence of the Smiths' legitimate son, that he gradually gained a foothold in Smith Corp, eventually becoming the group's president. Mom used to say that she loved Dad, and Dad was her and my support. But now she only tells me that nothing in this world is a permanent reliance. Mountains crumble, water flows away. Only by relying on yourself, knowing what you want, will you never gamble and lose. I hugged her and said, But Mom, you will always be Lily's support. Mom smiled, her eyes slightly red, and touched my head. Lily, you will always be Mom's support too. I leaned closer into her arms. Mom's arms are always the warmest. My younger brother stood beside me, tugging at my clothes in grievance. Sister, I want a hug too. Mom and I both laughed. Dad still often ran to the psychological clinic to look for Mom. After Mom directly asked the security guard to drive him away, refusing to even see him, Dad came to the school again to find me. He brought me a pink doll. It was what he had promised to bring me the night before he went abroad 7 years ago. At that time, my 3rd birthday was only 2 days away. Dad told me that he was going to bring Aunt Monica back to apologize to Mom. Then, bring back the doll I wanted the most and rush back to celebrate my birthday with me. 7 years. I didn't wait for him to celebrate my birthday with me, nor did I wait for the doll he promised. Even after returning to the country after 7 years, the first time he saw me, he didn't remember the doll he promised me. But now, he finally realized that neither Mom nor I wanted to see him anymore. He then thought of using the doll I once longed for to please me. But 7 years and 2,000 days and nights. That Lily, who was not even 3 years old, had already grown up, and had long since stopped liking dolls. Dad carefully handed the doll to me and said, Dad didn't forget what he promised Lily. Lily, go tell Mom that you want Mom to come back to Dad, okay? I looked at him calmly, without saying a word. And he probably thought I was moved. His voice became more and more eager. Lily, in this world, only I am your real dad. Go tell Mom that you can't live without Dad. Lily is the best girl, okay? I looked at him. Looking at his impatient, ridiculous and embarrassed appearance, I couldn't help but chuckle. Just like 7 years ago. Kneeling with you outside Mom's bedroom door, telling Mom that I was very cold. Saying I couldn't live without Dad, asking Mom to open the door. Dad's anxious and expectant face instantly froze. I let go of my hand, letting the doll he stuffed into my hand fall to the ground. Then I held back the soreness in my eyes and told him calmly, word by word. I'm not that child who doesn't understand anything anymore. I will no longer be an accomplice to you hurting Mom. In his incredulous, utterly frustrated and at a loss look, I said with increasing disgust, Mom and I both stopped being unable to live without you a long time ago. Don't dream, Mr. David, Dad said urgently and angrily. Lily, what did you call me? I will always be your own father. I looked at him coldly and said, my father died 5 years ago. I turned and walked back to the classroom, waiting for Nanny Martha to pick me up. Behind me was my father's pained and unwilling voice. No, it's not like this. I will definitely bring you and your mother back to my side. We are a family. We haven't divorced yet. I haven't agreed to the divorce. Even if I signed the divorce agreement, it doesn't count unless I'm personally present. I didn't understand any of this and ignored him. After that, I would only stay in the classroom after school, waiting for Nanny Martha to take me away. Neither I nor my mother saw my father again, until the end of winter. My mother's psychological clinic in Haiching officially opened. My mother once told me that she didn't have any grand ambitions. Actually, one psychological clinic was enough for her. She just wanted to wait until the clinic in Haiching was stable. Then she would leave Daddy Arthur and move to Haiching with me. She would work there, and I would study there. And Uncle Will was also from Haiching and was buried in Haiching after he died. During Qingming Festival, we could also go to his grave and burn incense for him. She didn't like Beijing. She didn't like the Millers, who only wanted to use her as a pawn. Nor did she like that marriage, which was only about interests and not about feelings. She used many, many years. And even now, she is still trying her best, just wanting to truly break free. The day my mother's new clinic opened, it happened to be the weekend, so I went to Haiching to be with her. Many people came to the clinic to congratulate her. Inside and out, it was almost completely blocked. Most of those people were acquaintances of Daddy Arthur. Subordinates, relatives, or clients. They came to support my mother in order to please Daddy Arthur. My mother greeted them politely. In front of people, she didn't refuse Daddy Arthur's arm around her. Daddy Arthur, who used to hate these occasions, now seemed to be more and more comfortable in them. Only at times like this could he be most justified in being close to my mother. He put his arm around my mother and accepted the toasts from everyone. And he patiently listened to people praising. Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Arthur are still so loving and well-matched, it's the envy of everyone. Daddy Arthur's back seemed to be straighter, just as the scene was in full swing. A cold and abrupt voice rang out from outside the door. When did my wife become Mrs. Arthur? The noisy crowd quickly fell silent. Countless questioning gazes turned towards the door. I turned my head and saw my father standing outside the door. His face was firm and resolute, as if he had made some kind of determination. Aunt Monica was following behind him, her face full of anger and exasperation. Are you crazy, David? Why are you still looking for her, such a slutty woman? I'm ashamed for you. My father's face was pale. He had only been back in the country for a few months, but he seemed to have become much more haggard. His expression was stubborn, and he stared intently at my mother, who was being held by Daddy Arthur. No matter what, Sarah and Lily are my legal wife and daughter. Today, I must take them back. A murmur of voices gradually rose from the crowd. What's going on? Isn't that Professor David, the orthopedic surgeon who just returned to the country? Sarah and Lily are President Arthur's wife and daughter. How did they become his? Don't you know? Lily is Sarah's daughter with her ex-husband. The ex-husband is Professor David? That can't be. Even so, didn't they divorce? Could it be that they haven't divorced yet? The whispers gradually grew louder due to the shock. The group of people who had been flattering and pleasing my mother just a moment ago. Now the way they looked at my mother turned into undisguised ridicule and jokes. Outsiders said that if Smith Corp hadn't had an accident, and Daddy Arthur was just an illegitimate child, given the Millers' position in the business world at that time, my mother would not have been able to marry into the Smiths. But now Daddy Arthur had become the group president. He was no longer the unpromising illegitimate child. In the murmurs, someone very lightly gloated. Bigamy is illegal. Daddy Arthur's face turned dark and ugly. He reached out to call security to chase my father and Aunt Monica away. My father sneered. Sarah has always been my legal wife. Mr. Arthur, no matter how great your ability is, it's not right to snatch someone's wife and daughter and then drive people away, is it? Daddy Arthur couldn't bear it any longer, took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and was about to punch him. My mother reached out and calmly grabbed his arm and said, "No need, I can handle it myself." Countless strange and questioning gazes turned towards my mother. This scene felt so familiar to me. 7 years ago, when my mother's career was finally starting to look bright, my father brought Aunt Monica and gave her a fatal blow. At that time, she was also facing countless condemning and mocking gazes. And now, 7 years later, when my mother was finally gradually embarking on the path she longed for, my father once again brought Aunt Monica to push her into deep water. At this moment, I looked at the man outside the door. I could no longer find any trace of the man I used to call Dad on his face. His so-called wanting to win back me and my mother was nothing more than a desperate coercion. Mom walked calmly to Dad. Her voice was icy. "Since you're here, let's get everything clear today." In Dad's eyes, there was a fleeting moment of panic and guilt, but he quickly regained his firmness and said, "Sarah, I don't know how you managed to get the divorce papers done back then. But I'm sure you know, even if I signed the divorce agreement, as long as I wasn't present to process the divorce, then the procedures you went through are illegal. These years with you and Arthur are called illegal cohabitation." Like a stone thrown into a calm lake, gasps of shock rippled through the crowd, like a drop of water falling into hot oil. Even Daddy Arthur's expression changed at that moment. When Mom married him, he naturally assumed she was divorced. But he probably didn't investigate the specifics. Mom looked up, silently watching Dad, her eyes calm and still. 7 years ago, the night Uncle Will suddenly committed suicide, Mom's emotions collapsed. And Dad suggested he go abroad to find Aunt Monica. The look in her eyes when she looked at Dad then seemed to be like this. Her eyes were like a stagnant pool, with no ripples at all. She simply had no expectations or feelings for Dad anymore. But Dad seemed to think at this moment that Mom's attitude was an admission of what he said. He sighed softly, revealing a magnanimous and tolerant look. But Sarah, I don't intend to make things difficult for you. What's past is past. I can choose not to pursue your and Mr. Arthur's legal responsibilities. As for your little son, although he's spoiled and rude, if you insist on it, I can accept him for your sake. He was already making arrangements, as if it was natural, for what would happen after he and Mom got back together. Halfway through his speech, he looked at Aunt Monica, who was extremely displeased. Then suddenly remembering something, he said, "But Monica hasn't found a place to live since returning to the country. I know you don't like her, she'll move out after staying for a while." So he had been back in the country for months, and Aunt Monica was still living with him. And he could still so confidently force Mom to go back with him. Aunt Monica's face darkened as she said unhappily, "David, what do you mean? Who wants to live with her? She's annoying to look at. Let her live somewhere else." Dad frowned, interrupting her. "If you don't want to, then move out. Sarah is my wife. If I don't live with her, who am I going to live with?" Aunt Monica raised her chin. "Why can't you live with me? What kind of relationship do we have? Weren't there plenty of times we shared a blanket during those 7 years?" Dad's face flushed red and white for a moment, full of anger. You shut up. I only slept on the floor in your place. When did we ever sleep in the same bed?" Mom watched them indifferently, arguing back and forth. Until they finally stopped, she spoke in a faint voice. "David, our marital relationship was dissolved long ago." Dad sighed again helplessly. "Sarah, I told you it's illegal. Even if the divorce agreement was indeed signed by me." Daddy Arthur couldn't stand it anymore and stepped forward, saying, "Sarah, let me handle this for you. Even if what he said is true, I will find the best lawyer." Mom looked at Dad, at his triumphant and aggressive face. She chuckled lightly. "Who told you that I used the divorce agreement signed by you to get a divorce?" Dad froze for a moment, and Daddy Arthur also froze. Mom's eyes were filled with coldness, and she continued, word by word. "5 years ago, I applied to the court to declare you dead. In fact, I told him once before. When he came to school to find me, I told him. My dad died 5 years ago. But at that time, he thought I was just being childish and saying angry words. 7 years ago, after Dad ignored everything and chased Aunt Monica abroad, Mom, with me seriously ill, also suddenly lost her job. She was unable to pay for living expenses, unable to pay for my tuition and medical bills. She asked the Millers for help for the first time. But the Millers said they would only help Mom if she agreed to a marriage alliance. Mom suffered from severe insomnia and mental breakdown. When she couldn't hold on any longer, she took the divorce agreement that Dad had signed and went to the Civil Affairs Bureau and the court. Before accepting the marriage alliance, she had to get a divorce first. But everyone told her, if Dad wasn't present, the divorce procedures couldn't be completed. The Millers watched Mom struggling desperately in the abyss of despair with me, and were unwilling to offer any help. Mom went to the court to make a scene, went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to make a scene. She accused Dad of cheating, but the person in charge said they needed valid evidence. No matter how much she broke down and made a scene, she couldn't dissolve her marital relationship with Dad. Until 5 years ago, Dad had been abroad without a trace for 2 years. Mom lived with me in an old and dilapidated place, gradually becoming desperate. The court was so annoyed by Mom's constant noise. A judge finally gave Mom a subtle suggestion, saying that after a relative or spouse cannot be contacted for 2 years, you can apply for a declaration of absence or death. Once the declaration is established, the marital relationship can be dissolved. That was when Mom and I were desperate, and about to fall completely into the deep sea, and finally grabbed a life-saving straw. Mom finally got divorced, and then with a dirty face and a disheveled appearance, returned to the Millers. This time, she was begging for a marriage alliance. My congenital heart disease required expensive medical treatment and care. Her medical skills were questioned and resisted because of Uncle Will's suicide back then. The mental clinic closed down and she couldn't find a good job. The meager salary she earned to support me was like a drop in the bucket. Grandfather didn't even want to see her. Grandmother glanced at her, her eyes filled with disgust, saying, "Looking so awful, divorced with a child." Did you think a marriage alliance is something anyone can go for? She looked at her mother's rough and chapped face and hands, feeling more and more that she was useless. She summoned the servant, about to kick me and my mother out. Uncle Robert happened to return, giving me and my mother a blank look. Then he said coldly, "Didn't the Smiths have some trouble and ask Dad to help? A tiger fallen on the plane, what a great opportunity. Once the Smiths get through this, we won't be able to reach them later." Grandmother's eyes were filled with admiration as she looked at Uncle Robert. Uncle Robert was the most proud and perfect work of her and grandfather. At a young age, he had easily taken over Smith Corp, allowing it to develop rapidly. But she still sneered. Even if the Smiths are in trouble, would they look at her in this state? Uncle Robert said again, "Doesn't the Smiths still have a good-for-nothing illegitimate son?" Thus, my mother's marriage alliance with the Smiths was decided. At that time, she had finally grabbed onto a piece of driftwood in the deep sea. Even though Daddy Arthur was extremely disgusted and unwilling, and made 3 prenuptial agreements, my mother still obeyed everything. She guaranteed that she would not talk about feelings after marriage, and would never pester him. At night, she hugged me tightly and said, "At least Lily will finally have money to see a doctor, money to live well." Those were all things from a long time ago. I pulled my thoughts back, hearing my mother coldly say again, "Although I failed to successfully pronounce you dead." But thankfully, the disappearance was established, and the divorce application was approved. "So David, do you understand?" Father's face trembled violently as he looked at her in disbelief. "No. Impossible. You clearly knew that I hadn't disappeared. You also have my number." My mother laughed. "So, while you were chasing another woman abroad for 7 years, should I have waited for you for 7 years? Father's face gradually turned pale. He said anxiously in Gonglan, If you had contacted me, I would have come back sooner." Mother interrupted him. "I didn't need you to come back." In the crowd, shocked and disdainful gazes were directed at father. He didn't even come back for 7 years, and didn't contact his wife. Was he with another woman abroad? How could someone do something like that? Looking at that self-disciplined and upright medical professor, he actually does such disgusting things. Is the other woman the one next to him? Pui. Aunt Monica's face flushed red, annoyed and embarrassed. I'm not. Someone in the crowd directly raised their phone, pointing it at her. Aunt Monica anxiously grabbed father's clothes, repeatedly hiding behind him. Someone said disgustedly, "In broad daylight, they dare to pull on clothes so intimately. What else could they do in private if they say nothing happened?" Father didn't expect things to suddenly take such a turn. His face was a mix of green and white. The once eloquent young professor, now even his voice was incoherent. "You don't slander people. Monica is straightforward and doesn't know her limits. But she and I are like sworn brothers." Aunt Monica pulled at father's sleeve, her voice low and urgent. You don't say anything." She actually knew very well. Her clumsy acting and disguise, pretending to be generous, but in fact pestering father relentlessly. Only father would believe that she was really so innocent. Someone in the crowd couldn't help but laugh. Sworn brothers who left their wife and children to spend 7 years abroad together. "I've opened my eyes, Professor David. Why don't you go tell jokes?" Laughter erupted. Someone immediately uploaded the video they took to the internet, titled "The New Definition of Sworn Brothers." Father's face was now only iron blue. He squeezed into the crowd to stop them. "You are spreading rumors, infringing on portrait rights. It's illegal." Aunt Monica couldn't take it anymore. She covered her face and cried, turning to run out. But someone stepped forward and anxiously stopped her. "Don't go yet. There are still people who haven't taken pictures. How can sworn brothers cry?" The crowd fell into chaos. Laughter and sarcastic voices arose. In the chaos, my mother walked to my side. She gently took my hand and said, "I had a swing specially made in the backyard for you and your brother to play on. Want to go see it?" I nodded and followed her to the backyard. Behind us was father's desperate and helpless voice. "Sarah, don't go. You listen to me." But the crowd blocked him. Then Daddy Arthur's security guards came and controlled him. My mother and I ignored it and walked to the backyard. The noise and commotion from the front hall finally dissipated around us. Mother took me to see the swing and pointed out the fenced-in garden plot to me. All Lily's favorite flowers will be planted here. The flowers will bloom when the weather warms up next year. Lily will definitely like them. At most a year, Mom should be able to manage the clinic here well. Bring Lily and move here. I subconsciously asked, what about Daddy Arthur and little brother? A gust of wind rose in the deep winter courtyard, causing the swing to sway silently. Mom tightened the scarf around my neck a little. After a long silence, she said softly, Mr. Arthur won't be coming. As for your brother, if he's willing to follow Mom, we'll bring him here. I felt sad. Even though I knew that Mom had been waiting for this day for many years, I still couldn't help but say, in a trembling and urgent voice, little brother is still young. He doesn't understand anything. He shouldn't know how to make a choice yet. He was only 4 years old. Mom and I were by his side when he was born. He never understood the stiffness and awkwardness in Daddy Arthur and Mom's relationship. In his mind, Dad and Mom were just Dad and Mom, and I was just his sister, like parts of his body, never meant to be separated. That kind of choice for him was too cruel. Mom pinched my scarf with her fingertips and lowered her head. I saw her red eyes and the slight trembling between her fingers. In that moment, I suddenly really wanted to say, actually, Daddy Arthur doesn't seem that bad either. But I heard a sudden voice not far away. The contract is a bit urgent, so I brought it over for you to sign. I turned my head and saw Daddy Arthur standing not far away, and the secretary Linda, walking towards him with the contract. Daddy Arthur silently looked in our direction. He must have heard what Mom and I said just now. I saw his calm eyes, the corners of his eyes seeming to be slightly red. He didn't know what he was thinking, or maybe he was just distracted. A few confetti pieces from the confetti cannon were stuck on his shoulder. Secretary Linda seemed to remind him softly, and then reached out to brush them off. Daddy Arthur lowered his eyes to look at the person in front of him, without dodging. Mom then softly said to me, Mr. Arthur probably has someone he likes. That's Secretary Linda? But I felt that Mom and him were the most well-matched. I lowered my eyes sadly, and followed Mom out of the backyard. In the evening, Daddy Arthur drove us home. Mom casually asked him, Isn't the driver here today? Daddy Arthur said unhappily, I prefer to drive myself. Mom looked at him strangely. She opened the back door, wanting to sit in the back with me and little brother. Daddy Arthur angrily opened the passenger door for her and said, Isn't there room in the front? The more Mom looked at him, the stranger he seemed. On the way back, little brother and I watched cartoons in the back seat. Daddy Arthur had a stern face, and kept glancing at Mom from time to time, seemingly afraid that she wouldn't notice. Mom then asked again, Is everything okay at the company? I saw Linda coming to find you from so far away. Daddy Arthur gave a very heavy, cold laugh. So you saw it, you're so generous. He was referring to the secretary Linda, helping him brush the confetti off his shoulder. Mom was silent for a long time. She turned her head to look out the window, and after a while, responded softly, Between us, there's no such thing as generosity. Only talk about interests, not feelings. Was the first rule that Daddy Arthur discussed with Mom before they got married. The car fell into a long silence. Only little brother, completely unaware, pulled on me and exclaimed, Sister, look, the monster is defeated again. Daddy Arthur glared at him in the rearview mirror and confiscated his phone. Little brother cried all the way home. At night, Mom was in the bedroom helping me with my homework. Daddy Arthur suddenly hugged his quilt and coldly pushed the door open, saying, I'm sleeping here tonight. I've asked the nanny to help Lily with her homework. He seemed to have been angry all day, although Mom didn't seem to pay much attention. I stood up with my homework, confused. I hurried out, not wanting to witness the disputes between adults. As I left, I heard Daddy Arthur say in a very dissatisfied voice, Sarah, fulfilling necessary marital obligations is also part of the agreement. I went to the study. Nanny Martha left after helping me finish my homework. When I went out to return to my bedroom, I happened to see Daddy Arthur carrying his quilt out. I vaguely heard his angry voice. I don't have the hobby of sleeping with a dead person. Responding to him was the bang of the bedroom door closing. In a fit of anger, Daddy Arthur slept on the floor outside Mom's bedroom. When I went downstairs to get a glass of water late at night, he was still lying outside the door, rolling around in his quilt. Clearly his resentment hadn't dissipated. He was holding his phone, looking at the news, mocking Daddy and Aunt Monica, and constantly clicking on the payment interface, buying popularity for the news. I couldn't help but ask him, "Dad, isn't it cold on the floor?" Daddy Arthur raised his voice towards the door. "It's not cold, I'm in good health." The bedroom door finally opened. Mom looked down at him expressionlessly and said, "Kumain, you're not sleeping? The child has school tomorrow." Daddy Arthur immediately got up and took his blanket inside, his face reluctant. "I'm not sleeping on the sofa is too hard." The weekend ended, and I went to school as usual. The news about Dad and Aunt Monica was spreading more and more intensely. Dad, following the hospital's advice, issued a statement. He said that his years abroad were just normal medical studies, and he had hardly any contact with Aunt Monica. As for being photographed several times taking Aunt Monica to the hospital abroad, he argued in his statement. At that time, she was suffering from depression and frequently contemplated suicide. She jumped off a building, her life hanging by a thread. Even if she were a stranger as a doctor, I would have lent a hand. He completely severed his relationship with Aunt Monica. He didn't even mention just brothers. The online community temporarily couldn't find any more faults with him. His position as director in the hospital and his professorship at the university were temporarily saved. But Aunt Monica was doxxed. Her 7-year physical examination and psychological evaluation reports were also leaked. The reports showed that everything was normal, and there were no problems. The news, which had initially cooled down, surged back to the top trending searches. Then, a doctor from a foreign hospital anonymously revealed, "Such a well-known old actress. Jumping off buildings, she always picks soft grass. Crashing cars, she always picks slow-moving cars. Slitting her wrists, she barely cuts her back. Taking sleeping pills, she doesn't even take as much as I do when I have insomnia. Our hospital no longer accepts her. We told her to go back to China and harm her own people. Isn't that why she made that sucker of a man take her back to China?" Beneath the comment was a picture of Aunt Monica jumping off a building. She was being carried away on a stretcher from a thick patch of grass. She acted as if she had depression for 7 years, acting like a brother to Dad. It turned out that even the doctors abroad who treated her knew. The only one who could be deceived was probably Dad. I suddenly wondered, when Dad sees the truth that even strangers can easily find out, when he sees the true face of the so-called innocent, frank, and uninhibited Aunt Monica, what kind of expression will he have? But Mom doesn't care anymore, so I don't have much interest in exploring it either. Aunt Monica opened a psychological clinic in China, claiming it could cure various psychological illnesses through a new type of treatment that implants beautiful memories. Because of the online public opinion storm, the clinic quickly became deserted and faced closure. But I think Uncle Will lost his life. My mother was saddled with a crime and struggled for so many years. And although Aunt Monica is now hated by everyone and her clinic can't continue, it's still far from enough for her to atone for her sins. But for Aunt Monica, who has always been smooth sailing and always able to calculate success, this is already a huge and unbearable grievance. During the final exams, I still got the top grade in the year. Mom took me and my brother to the mall to celebrate. After we finished eating, we just happened to run into them. Aunt Monica, her hair disheveled like a shrew, was tightly grabbing Dad, angrily arguing about something. She no longer had that frank and unrestrained look from before. Clutching Dad's sleeve tightly, her eyes bloodshot, she said, "You think you can hide from me for the rest of your life? David, you've ruined me. You've made me lose face. Are you satisfied? Are you and Sarah satisfied?" Dad no longer had the helpless, tolerant look he used to have when facing her. He pushed her away with extreme disgust, his voice full of resentment. "How dare you come looking for me? You faked your illness for 7 years, and all your suicidal attempts were fake. Monica, you." His eyes, full of extreme hatred, also contained deep regret and pain. He continued, almost gnashing his teeth, word by word. So disgusting. How could I, for someone as scheming and despicable as you, have abandoned Sarah and Lily for a full 7 years? His eyes gradually turned red. His shoulders trembled, and he raised his hand to cover his face. Aunt Monica suddenly took a step back. She stared at him and laughed miserably. You say I'm disgusting. You actually say I'm disgusting. David, what are you pretending for? You chased me abroad for 7 years. You're a medical professor. Could you really not see at all whether I was faking it or not? Dad suddenly let go of his hand and desperately refuted, trying to deceive himself. If I could have seen through your true colors sooner, I wouldn't have believed your countless suicide attempts. I would have returned home long ago to find Sarah and Lily. Aunt Monica's eyes were bloodshot, and she laughed hysterically. Do you believe that yourself? You were just going along with it, pretending to be stupid, enjoying me and Sarah fighting over you. You enjoyed me scheming and desperately clinging to you abroad. And you believed that your wife and daughters would always be unable to leave you, standing in place and waiting for you. Waiting for the day you got tired of me trying to kill myself for you. Then you could return home, and everything would be the same. Dad's face turned red and white, and he interrupted her words in a rage. Shut up. You're talking nonsense. If I hadn't been kept in the dark by you. The number of onlookers in the mall gradually increased. Soon someone recognized them and discussions arose. Isn't that the sworn brother who jumped off buildings abroad for 7 years? Isn't the other one Professor David? Taking her to the hospital for 7 years. TSK, how dare they show their faces in public? Dad's face became extremely unsightly. He looked at Aunt Monica as if she were a terrifying monster. He retreated backward, trying to distance himself from her and leave this place. But Aunt Monica wore a look of resolute determination. Crying and shouting, she stubbornly blocked his path. Her voice became increasingly shrill and resentful. You really are being kept in the dark. Wouldn't you have, in 7 years, dared to make even one phone call to Sarah? Eugène Sien disliked, resented her for not being as good as before after childbirth, and chased after me abroad. Yet you felt guilty and didn't dare touch me, nor did you dare contact her. You fantasized that after 7 years, such a long time, Sarah would definitely let go of her resentment and welcome you back home. But she's already remarried, and her son is 4 years old, ha 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 ha. David, you miscalculated. Dad's face gradually became deathly pale. He shook his head, lost and dazed. No, it's not like this. I was just deceived by you. Aunt Monica looked deranged and emotionally out of control. She no longer avoided the phone cameras pointing at her. Her eyes were wide with fury, and she laughed maniacally. Film. You all just film away. I don't care anymore. I'm already a pariah. My life can't get any worse than this. She believed that losing face and losing the clinic she ran was the worst thing that could happen in her life. She glanced sideways, then looked at Dad's panicked and angry expression and screamed. I've been ruined. David, you won't have it easy either. I'm going to let everyone know that you weren't deceived by me at all during those 7 years. You just Sien disliked, resented your wife after she gave birth and had an affair in your mind. I'm disgusting, but how much better are you? Dad was infuriated beyond endurance and slapped Aunt Monica hard across the face. You shut up. The sound of camera shutters clicked rapidly, capturing the scene of him hitting her. The scene was pure chaos. As Mom and I left, I heard Dad's hollow, desperate voice. How could I ever have thought you were better than Sarah? I'm really crazy, I'm crazy. After that scene at the mall, Dad's reputation was completely ruined. Even without ironclad proof of his infidelity, public opinion was enough to crush him. Banners accusing him were hung at the hospital's main entrance. He was quickly temporarily suspended from the hospital, and his professor title was revoked by the university. The young Professor David, who used to be promoted by the university and hospital and displayed in the most prominent places, had now become a scandal that the university and hospital avoided, unwilling to mention him at all. Meanwhile, Mom's newly opened clinic in Haicheng had a growing number of patients, and its reputation was steadily improving. She began to look for a suitable house in Haicheng, preparing to transfer me and my younger brother to schools there. If my younger brother was willing to go with me and Mom. One night, I couldn't help but ask her, if we all leave, what will Daddy Arthur do? He'll be sad. Mom hugged me, not speaking for a long time. She looked out at the dark night outside the window. Around her neck was the necklace that Daddy Arthur had given her for her birthday earlier in the year. She didn't used to like wearing jewelry. She had been married to Daddy Arthur for 5 years. And it seemed that she didn't feel nothing for Daddy Arthur, contrary to what she said. After a while, Mom said softly to me, he married me because at that time, he had no choice but to in order to enter Smith Corp. It's different now. The difficulties between me and him are over. Lily, he will marry someone he likes, have children he loves more. She stopped halfway and gently touched my head. You're still young. Why am I talking to you about these things? But I'm not young anymore. I'm 10 years old, and I understand what Mom is saying. And I don't think that what Daddy Arthur hopes for now is to marry another aunt. That night he threw a tantrum and slept on the floor outside Mom's bedroom. I saw it. His face showed dissatisfaction, but his eyes were red. The next day he fired that secretary Linda. But I knew that Mom had already decided to leave. She also felt that Daddy Arthur would be very happy about this. I lowered my eyes and didn't say anything after all. By autumn, Mom had almost finished preparing to take me to Haicheng. She had bought a small house. She already had a stable client base at the clinic there. She had also printed out the divorce agreement, saying she'd find the right time to talk to Daddy Arthur. When she and I went out, we still occasionally saw Dad. He had left the hospital and lost his prestigious job. He had become much thinner, and his face was haggard. I suddenly remembered what Mom had said many years ago. That Dad was the most loving, most refined, and most handsome man in the world to us. He had long betrayed what Mom had called the most loving. And now, it seemed that even refined and handsome was gone. He stood across the street, lost and dejected, and saw Mom and me from afar. He was so surprised and eager to run over to us. But the street was filled with heavy traffic. Cars quickly blocked his view, and the sound of horns blared. Mom and I got into a car on the side of the street and left without hesitation. In the last glance I saw through the car window, he had fallen onto the street, whether he had been hit by a car or had simply lost his footing. He was so disheveled and miserable, with no trace of his former self. I averted my gaze, lowered my eyes, and silently looked at my fingertips. After that, Mom and I rarely saw him. We occasionally heard that he had been hospitalized, whether due to illness or depression. On the day of the Little New Year, a traditional Chinese festival, a major incident involving Aunt Monica was exposed. A female patient whom her previous clinic had treated sued her for receiving huge sums of money and illegally implanting severely false memories in the patient. That female patient was once abducted by a middle-aged man. In a state of confusion, she was taken to Aunt Monica's clinic. The man gave Aunt Monica a large sum of money. He wanted her to implant memories in the woman, saying that he was her loving husband, until the woman's family discovered something was wrong and went there with the police. The woman, after being treated by a psychologist, remembered being abducted by the man and having memories implanted by Aunt Monica. At that time, she had been living with the man as husband and wife for over half a year. The woman completely broke down, losing control and attempting suicide, nearly losing her life. The family was extremely emotional. They said that even if it meant losing everything, they would make sure Aunt Monica and that man died. The psychologist no longer healed and saved people, but became an accomplice to criminals. The entire internet was shocked and angered. The police quickly investigated. They found that Aunt Monica's psychological clinic, which helped people implant memories for treatment, was completely illegal. She had not obtained a formal business license. Her previous patients and clients were all contacted privately. She had already been attacked by public opinion for over half a year, and her mental state was on the verge of collapse. After this incident, she was arrested by the police and sent to prison. Perhaps in a state of mental distraction, she began to frequently remember killing Uncle Will in the past. Or perhaps she was mentally disturbed, making a scene and saying that a female prison guard looked a lot like Uncle Will. No one paid attention to her, and the female prison guard still appeared in front of her frequently. In prison, She became increasingly insane and desperate. In the depths of winter, when Mom started preparing to leave with me, Grandpa suddenly called her. The nearly 60-year-old man, on the other end of the phone, his voice was panicked for the first time. Your brother has suddenly disappeared. He left a huge mess at the company. He suddenly said he was gone and disappeared. No one can contact him. Ask him. If he's tired, I can approve a leave for him. That man who was always decisive and never contradicted. His tone, for the first time, carried a hint of guilt and appeasement. He seemed to be getting old too. Mom hesitated again and again, but still called Uncle Robert. That number that had been lying in her phone all these years. But it was the first time it had been dialed. The phone was answered quickly. Mom looked at the call duration that had started counting, stunned for a moment. After a long while, she opened her mouth very awkwardly and stiffly. Dad said he can't find you, he's worried about you. There seemed to be the sound of whistling wind on the other end. After a moment, a lost and deep male voice came through. Sarah, do you want to come and see Grandma? Grandma's grave hasn't been cleaned for many years. Mom clenched her phone, her eyes turning red in an instant. She was still worried about Uncle Robert. She bought the earliest plane tickets and took me and my brother. Then transferred to a bus and went to the mountains. When we found Uncle Robert, he was in his great-grandmother's old house, chopping vegetables, lighting a fire, and preparing to cook. His exquisite coat was stained with firewood ash and mud, but he was completely unaware, silently stuffing a new piece of wood into the stove. When Mom took me and my brother in, he heard the sound and looked back. A very deep look, but his voice was very calm. Sarah's back. His tone was like addressing a young sister. We sat together around the table and ate. Uncle Robert picked up food for me and my brother, and served soup for Mom. He sat down and suddenly said very softly, "You might not believe it. I haven't eaten a meal with my family in years." Mom paused her chopsticks and looked up at him in disbelief. He drank some wine and continued in a daze. Almost all the time in the past was spent studying. To skip grades, to pass the gifted youth class, to get full marks and be first in everything. Later, taking over the company, to do everything perfectly. Endless contracts to sign, endless business trips to take, endless meetings to attend. He looked up at Mom. Sarah, I didn't suddenly abandon the company irresponsibly. I used. For years, I just wanted to come and see Grandma. Mom lowered her head. There were shimmering tears in her eyes. She said softly, "I'm not here to call you back either. It's very cold in the mountains. I brought you some extra thick clothes." Uncle Robert's face suddenly trembled. His voice gradually became shaky and unclear. When I was in high school, I just glanced at a girl. That day she wore a butterfly hairpin. The butterfly looked so real. I was just curious. Just one glance. That afternoon, that girl was forced to go abroad. It was hard enough to have a friend in college. My parents forced me to bring him back, forcing me to ask about his family background. After that, I didn't even have anyone to talk to anymore. The Millers raised Mom and Uncle Robert in completely different and extreme ways, wanting to raise one into a beautiful and useless daughter, as the best tool for a marriage alliance, raising the other into the most perfect and ruthless heir. Whether it was Mom or Uncle Robert, the Millers tried their best to trap them in cages, molding them into the most satisfactory and proudest versions of themselves. Mom silently finished her meal, gently turning to look at Uncle Robert and said, "Go try on the clothes? I'm not sure what your size is now. I don't know if they'll fit." Uncle Robert's eyes turned red in an instant. Mom had said that she and Uncle Robert lived here with their great-grandmother when they were very young. At that time, the Millers hadn't controlled them too much, and they were still the closest siblings. Uncle Robert followed Mom to try on the clothes, and the size was just right. Over the years, Mom and Uncle Robert had no contact, but I knew that she occasionally saw him from afar. She always couldn't help but secretly look at him for a long time. Mom said softly to Uncle Robert, "Wear it if it fits. It's cold in the mountains, this is thick and warm." Uncle Robert looked at Mom for a long time with his eyes lowered. After hesitating for a long time, he finally reached out and helped her tighten her scarf. "You two, Sarah, don't catch a cold. Mom turned her head and looked at the swirling snow outside the door. I saw a tear suddenly fall from the corner of her eye. Mom took us, saying we'd stay here for a few days. Together with Uncle Robert, we'd keep Great-Grandma company. The snow fell all night long. A cold wave struck, and the mountains were freezing cold. The next day, the road iced over, and the road leading to the mountains was blocked. Uncle Robert said that he would return to Jing City, back to his original life, when the ice and snow melted. We sat in the old house roasting by the firewood crackling as it burned. My younger brother had never seen it before and kept exclaiming in surprise. Uncle Robert reached out and put my younger brother on his lap. He then talked about proposing that Mom marry Daddy Arthur. Actually, it wasn't for profit. I had some dealings with Arthur in business at that time. He seemed cold on the surface, but he didn't seem like a bad person. Everyone outside said he was an illegitimate child. But actually, his mother was Chairman Smith's first wife. After his wife passed away from illness, Chairman Smith became wealthy. He remarried and hid his first marriage from the outside world. I just thought at the time, if you had to have a marriage alliance, marrying Arthur, perhaps at least you wouldn't have too bad of a life. The fire was burning high, reflecting Mom's eyes and making them appear red. Early the next morning, my younger brother and I were playing in the snow outside. In the distance, we suddenly saw a blurry black dot. The black dot gradually grew larger, and my younger brother exclaimed, "It looks like a puppy." He tugged at me and ran over. The black dot got closer and closer, gradually becoming the figure of a person. The figure swayed and staggered. I finally saw clearly that it seemed to be Daddy Arthur. My younger brother stared at him for a while, then suddenly shouted, "Daddy! Daddy!" He rushed over and bumped into Daddy Arthur's arms. The expected hug didn't come. Daddy Arthur fell to the ground with a thud from the impact, and passed out. Mom and Uncle Robert were both startled. Uncle Robert went to great lengths to send him to the town hospital for emergency treatment. It wasn't until the next morning that Daddy Arthur finally woke up. Mom was both angry and anxious, her eyes red, and she said angrily, "The roads are closed because of the snow. Why did you come all the way here?" Daddy Arthur had an four in his hand, and looked pale and pitiful. He was scolded by Mom. He lowered his eyes and dared not look at her again, but his voice was still full of dissatisfaction. "I saw the divorce agreement you put in the cabinet. Sarah, I won't agree." Mom stared at him coldly without saying a word. Daddy Arthur looked like he was ready to die rather than give in. "I'll transfer all the shares in my hand to you, and all the assets will be in your name. I had the lawyer void those prenuptial agreements a long time ago. Anyway, I just won't agree to a divorce." He raised his head again and looked at Mom awkwardly. "I'll correct my mistakes. Tell me what to change and I'll change it." Mom stared at him for a long time, finally sighing. "How long did you walk in the mountains?" Daddy Arthur's face immediately became even more pitiful. The bus arrived in town late at night. There were no cars going into the mountains after that. Mom looked at him in disbelief. "You mean you walked all night?" Daddy Arthur nodded. "I went to the mountains with you 2 years ago, and thought I remembered the way. But the road conditions in the mountains are too complicated, and I still took several wrong turns. By the second half of the night, my phone was dead. But I thought, you seem like you really want a divorce and might not come back. So no matter what, I had to find you." Mom glared at him with red eyes, but couldn't say a word for a long time. Daddy Arthur cautiously reached out and took her wrist, saying, "I'm sorry, I resented my dad at that time, and I also resented the marriage alliance he arranged for me. I said a lot of very bad things to you. Sarah, I regret it." Mom was silent for a long time, and finally said in a slightly hoarse voice, "All right, lie back down. Hospital gowns are thin. Don't you know it's cold?" Uncle Robert and I looked at each other silently and smiled. Outside the hospital room door, my younger brother was still obliviously playing with his monster. Outside the window at the end of the corridor, the morning sun shone in. Uncle Robert said to me gently, "The snow has stopped, and the sunny day has finally arrived. Lily, don't you think?" I nodded. "Yes, the sunny day has arrived." After Daddy got discharged from the hospital, we went back to Jing City together. On New Year's Eve, Uncle Robert, for the first time in a long time, didn't look at contracts and joined us for New Year's Eve dinner at a restaurant. After dinner, I saw Daddy again outside the restaurant. He was already sitting in a wheelchair. It seemed he was in a daze and had a car accident because of it. He had one leg amputated and would have to rely on a wheelchair for the rest of his life. He had already been fired from the hospital because of a scandal. Now in this state, it was even more difficult for him to find another job. When I walked over, he eagerly pushed his wheelchair closer to me. He told me that Aunt Monica had died in prison. Her mental state had been deteriorating. She had gone insane many times, saying that the female prison guard was Uncle Will. That Uncle Will had come to find her. There had been people in prison who pretended to be crazy to get out before, and no one believed her. Until one night, when the prison guard went to check the cells as usual, she completely lost control of her emotions and died of a heart attack. She had avoided the punishment for causing Uncle Will's death, but now she had still paid for Uncle Will with her life. Dad eagerly told me all of that. His voice trembling, he said, "I can't see your mother. Please tell her for me that Monica is dead. She will. She will be happy." I interrupted him in a low voice. Mother has already forgotten the past. Dad carefully and eagerly handed me a gift box saying, "A New Year's Eve gift for Lily. We agreed a long time ago that Dad would buy Lily a gift every New Year's Eve." I took it. Then, under his extremely surprised gaze, I threw the gift box into the trash can. I still told him calmly, "My biological father died a long time ago." In Dad's eyes, there was only endless grief and extreme regret. I walked past him and left, getting into the car waiting by the side of the road. Mom was sitting in the front seat, unwilling to look at him anymore. Through the car window, I saw him desperately trying to run towards us. He seemed to forget for a moment that his leg was amputated. He fell heavily from the wheelchair. I saw him looking towards the departing car with great effort from afar. His mouth was wide open and trembling. I couldn't hear the sound outside through the car window, but in that moment, I seemed to hear his endless, desperate cry. I looked away and looked ahead of the car. The car drove in the direction of home. In the silently falling snowflakes outside the window, I suddenly remembered again. Many years ago, when I was still young. He carried me home on his back, stepping across the long snow-covered ground. A very large coat wrapped around me. The snowflakes crunched under our feet, and he smiled warmly in my ear. "Dad is taking Lily to quickly go home and find Mommy."